So in the previous videos, we talked about what makes up a cultural commonwealth, what makes up a rights commonwealth. And now in this video, we'll depict what makes up a economic commonwealth. So the three commonwealths together make a threefold republic or threefold commonwealth. Let's pull up this slideshow for the economic commonwealth. This map of Russia we took this from an icon at the Free Nations Forum website there, or their one of their publications, and we include in our depictions of threefold commonwealths. We use a square diamond as the symbology for the economic commonwealth, whether it be for Russia or any other country. So what is in the economic sector? What makes up the economic commonwealth as a sovereign body? Um, Basically businesses and and what the basic economic activity is: food, clothing, shelter, transportation. Those four things are really the basic human needs. Basic human needs. Also utilities and infrastructure. So, of course, not all businesses are about food, clothing, shelter, transportation, utilities, but many of them are. Many of them are. Also, any sort of primary economic activity, and that's a technical term for raw minerals extraction and and farming. So mining and farming are the basis of the economy, and but also any sort of business activity. The chambers of commerce of the day are are the seeds of a sovereign economic sector. Um, all of these groups, these industry lobbies, presently they have captured the government. But what these industry lobbies need is their own sphere of action, where they are um, prospering the economy of humanity and not trying to control the government. And when the rights commonwealth is distinct from the economic commonwealth, they both have their own flags, they have their own leadership. The economic republic has its economic forum, and the rights republic has its rights assembly. And they're commensurate. They're of commensurate stature. And when those are distinct, the economy is distinct from the government, and the economy has a face, and the economy has a purpose and a responsible leadership. Then these industry and trade groups will have their own legitimate sphere of action. Instead of trying to capture and shape the government, in the rights government, in the rights state, only individual citizens have any say, and that's by voting and referendums. But in the present day Americanist democracy, well, that's short circuited because the industry lobbies have already legally bribed the persons who are going to be inserted into the government, in other words, the candidates. And so money and the economy has captured the right state. It's not really a right state in America. It's a economic state, a business. It's a business. The United States government is a business. It's captured by business, mainly the bank industry associations, the um, insurance lobby, and across the big oil, big pharmaceutical, all these big industries have captured the government. Now they're doing some legitimate action. I mean, there's hard, working people there. There's in all these industries, they're doing a lot of good, but it's out of tune. It's seriously and sickly out of tune because we don't live in a threefold commonwealth. We live in a twofold commonwealth. We have the government and then we have um, private sector, which is a kind of a confused um, mishmash of business and culture. And we have a public-private dichotomy, but it's captured by the money, the private money, and then we also come to hate the government too, the big government, because we're just the human being is squashed and invisible. The individual human being is so squashed compared to the big business and big government hand in hand, this twofold beast. So the threefold commonwealth is alive. It's a human society. It's a human organism. It's human scaled. The municipality is at the top. It's a confederation of municipalities. But to continue on this slide, so yeah, businesses are part of the economy, obviously, and their various industry and trade groups. In olden days, you would call these guilds, actually, and one of the advocates for the threefold commonwealth, a Serbian British philosopher, Dmitry Mitronovich, he actually called them guilds. He was based in Britain, so the word guild still had some life to it. And yes, in a economic commonwealth, you could look upon these industry trade groups as guilds, and they're really, it's kind of a warm-hearted word. It harkens back to when economic life had a purpose and a meaning and was imbued with soul. Like you had the journeyman and the apprentice, and then the journeyman, and then the master. Of course, there were imbalances and things in the guild system, and there were reasons why the guild system came to an end in Britain and Europe, but there was also a lot of warm-heartedness to it, and we want to bring that back into the economy. So it's no longer this cold machine, which it's basically turns the human being into a kind of a desperate soldier trying to navigate between the boss and the landlord and the mortgage, the bank mortgage, which is French for death grip. The mortgage is the death grip, mort gage, death grip, if I'm not mistaken. So currency, of course, is part of the economic commonwealth, as are banks and the chambers of commerce. And since, in a economic commonwealth, in a threefold commonwealth, since municipalities are the basic unit of human society, we are strongly proposing that each municipality be set up with a municipal exchange trading system, a METS. There are already such things called local exchange trading systems, LETs, and they are basically local currencies, even if they don't have paper bills or coins. They are really currencies, and they exist. There's several let systems throughout the world, and they many of them function more or less pretty well. They stimulate the local economy. They build trust. They build human relationships. It's basically a ledger system, an electronic ledger system, where you do work for a neighbor or someone in the local area who's also a participant in that trading system, and they mark down that you perform this work, and and now you own quote unquote currency in that system. You own that kind of currency on the ledger, and then you can use that to pay someone else who's locally to perform a service for you, or barter. And it's it cuts out the U.S. dollar. Unfortunately, there's been like the United States government has cracked down some on the let systems, saying, "Oh yes, you can't just do this off the books. You can't just barter, and you have to give us the federal income tax on every barter exchange." Or like, um, nevertheless, the let system does work, and but we are proposing that it not just be some sort of alternative thing that pops up here and there where there's some visionary, um, you know, local group, but that in the threefold Commonwealth, in the economic Commonwealth, literally every municipality has its own municipal exchange trading system. That's just something that municipalities do. They plow the snow, they collect the trash, and they have a municipal a METS currency, and the boundaries exactly match the municipality because every municipality has one. It's not like a regional thing. It's a municipal trading system. It's for people who are citizens of that municipality. Now, when every municipality has one, there could be other arrangements where they have some sort of, regional system and so forth. But the basis of it still needs to be the municipality with the municipal boundaries, a municipal consciousness, a municipal economy. The next point, yeah, stock exchanges are a part of the economic sector, NASDAQ and Wall Street and so forth. When even though there's important reforms to be made of Wall Street, and we could speak about that. Um, I mean, just in short, like having every transaction be taxed with a flat tax, including stock transactions, and any sort of economic transaction has this a flat tax instead of income tax. Now that's a huge tax reform. It would be automated, automated, um, uh, a flat tax. I'm not sure flat tax is the right word. It's um, it's a just a what's the word? Transaction tax. Um, that alone could fund everything. That could fund. We don't need any more taxes, basically. Um, just get rid of all this like income tax, with all this terrible yearly crazy tribute where you're filling out papers and papers, and it just supports this tax preparation industry and like tax preparation lobby and all that. It's crazy. It is totally crazy, and it shows that Americans and wherever else this crazy tax system is bearing down on humanity, we're just we just bowing down. We're just tributaries of. I mean, every year we all do it. It is crazy. And so a transaction tax would just simplify it all. Everyone's just paying the transaction tax, and it's mostly automated. And the reason I mentioned that though is that's part of stock reform too. It's like um, all stock transactions, they're economic transactions. They need to be taxed. I don't care if you haven't liquidated it. Um, why when I do my labor, I mean, I'm not liquidating my labor every second. um, I get paid in a lump sum when I'm doing labor. Why is my labor taxed, but stock transactions are not taxed unless they cash out. Um, but that alone, the transaction tax, including stock transaction tax, would would fund what everything that needs to be funded as far as the cultural rights vouchers and the economic rights vouchers, and also just public civic rights funding. And it wouldn't be so ornery and terrible. Like, it's understandable that like libertarians are, the conservative half of humanity is hates taxes and the government, because it is a like Caesar, like a beast. So is big business, and threefold Commonwealth is about a countervailing force which brings them both down to size, a human scaled economy, and a human scaled governance, and a human scaled culture as well. So, speaking of stock exchange, a municipal economy, a municipal based economy, also each municipality has its own municipal stock exchange. Why do only like nation sized entities have stock exchanges? And in fact, there are some like US states that do have stock exchanges. I believe New Mexico has a stock exchange. And but every municipality could have a stock exchange, funds uh, enterprises that are based in that municipality. Um, the um, the economic threefolding is not about socialism or governmentalism or statism. It is about entrepreneurialism, human scaled, and a vivacious entrepreneurialism, micro businesses, meso businesses, um, and so many micro businesses, like little jobs, really need doing. Like people who are like picking up litter and watching, parking lot attendants, like actual human being instead of like video cameras. Um, like stewards of various of spaces instead of just having like cold video cameras. Um, like yeah, I said litter, but that's a huge deal. Like there's such like a blight in America, like this like dispiriting like litter in so many cities. It like all along the interstate and highways. It's just like this dark consciousness. Like, and when I say America, I'm not only pointing at America. Obviously, I have American culture in me, and so I can speak as an American. And I don't want our fellow Americans to be ashamed or singled out, because these most of these apply to many other nations in the world, or most or all other nations in the world. And and there are some things that are better about some other nations, and there's also many nations who are a lot worse off than America. That's almost goes without saying. So, but America is the most powerful nation in the history of the world. Um, the threefold Commonwealth, the threefold idea, the threefold way is better than the American way. It's better than the existing American way. We call that the Americanist way. It means an Americanism that's not willing to grow into something more beautiful, that's not willing to grow into something more wiser or beautiful and even stronger. Now, Americanism is just, it's willing to just go down the tubes. Americanism is okay with just like sending all the jobs to slave workers, and letting Detroit, Michigan, and just go to a horror story. Like, there's so many places in America that are just horrible. I mean, I lived in Akron, Ohio a little while um, recently, and of course there's beautiful aspects. There's lovely human beings there, but it is just desolating. I mean, much of it. This the poverty in certain neighborhoods, that, and of course, then the crime. Well, big surprise, like economic degradation and crime. Huh? I wonder if there's a relation. Um, can't people just be more moral? I mean, isn't it just about individual responsibility? Surely there's no correlation between economic desperation and crime. I mean, um, yeah, and so there's many places that are like the desolating neighborhoods I saw in Akron, and and there's and I started this off about litter, and litter. It's so important to have a pristine visual viewscape. I mean, you know, it's not. This is not rocket science. Like, Americans struggle with depression, and which is a scientific word for despair. And so we can fund all these insurance companies and banks and whatever, military, but we can't have a pristine, like litter free roadside. Like everywhere you look, most everywhere. I don't want to say everywhere, but most everywhere you look, there's litter and uh, bottles and cigarettes and all over the roadside and sidewalks. It's uncivilized. It's barbaric. It's um, but it's worthy of having a whole squad of people picking up litter every day, and being paid to do it. And in an economic commonwealth, and we're going to introduce the term unitist economics, unitism as an economic pathway. And we'll introduce that in a coming slide. But in unitism, everyone's basic needs, economic needs, and cultural needs, such as education, are met unconditionally. And then, but people's wants and luxuries got to work for them, and that's what jobs are for, to live to support our hobbies and luxuries and 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 aspirations. That's what jobs are for, not as a uh, desperate, you know, um, um, servitude. Like, gotta please the boss every moment, and if you get fired, good luck. You're gonna, you know, yeah. There is a place for discipline. There's a place for job. In unitist economics, yeah, people can be. There's no iron rice bowl. You can be fired from your job, but it's not such an existential uh, crisis, because your needs, food, clothing, shelter, transportation, and I mean clean food, such as organic food, um, clean water, purified water purified. These basic needs are met unconditionally by the economy. That's what the human economy is for, to provide our needs. It's not about control. It's not about hierarchy. It's not about that. Um, and and then your job, you do get paid for it, and some jobs still pay more than others. Um, but the money you earn there is a bonus. It's on top of what you need. It's it fulfills your wants, and when that's the case, then you can have these little jobs. Then jobs don't necessarily need to pay that much. Um, Granted, unitism is for transparent capitalism, where the profit margin and everything is posted for all to see, and the salaries of the various positions are posted for all to see. Not necessarily not the names of the persons, because that's some kind of invasion of privacy, but the different echelons of labor are are posted for all to see, and the profit margin is posted for all to see. And that's not socialism. That's transparent capitalism. How can we make informed choices as consumers and laborers and as uh, managers and entrepreneurs if we don't have transparency? We're all in this together, and then you'll be able to justify having even little jobs where, yeah, I mean, I'm only getting paid, let's say, a few dollars an hour to pick up trash all day, but my needs are met, and I'm only doing this for, let's say, 4 hours a day, or for 6 days a week, or I'm just doing this for 1 hour a day, and I have some bigger job somewhere else. Um, it's not just wealthy people who, wealthy housewives who can do volunteering, and volunteering will pay can pay like there can be little jobs because they're so important. We need to have, like I said, litter pickup on all the roads every day, and eventually there won't be any litter. um, and all sorts of little jobs like that, like watchmen for the local sites and things, like a welcomers, like um, greeters, but you're getting paid to be a greeter for an hour a day or 4 hours a day. And then you can presently in America, like in probably the most of the rest of the world, it's like your job is such a big deal. Like it 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 it, it determines so much about your life, like your position in life, your class in life. We're not into the whole Marxist classist create division, but there is something to the fact of like so much is determined by your job with a capital J. And so because of that, like you don't see like upper upper middle class people or wealthy people, or even many, let's like say, middle class people, just doing some work that needs done, like um someone needs to man the cash register at the gas station. It is not a glamorous job. I've done it myself when I was younger. It is very not a glamorous job, and the people who do it are doing it to survive. Okay, they're doing their 8 hour shifts to survive, and it's not easy work. It's not respected work. It's not easy keeping an eye on everything, and often you're just like one person there. Many of the gas stations just convenience stores just have one person, so you have to have an eye in the back of your head watching the gas pumps, uh, cash register, unfriendly people, this and that, big lineups. What if you got to use the restroom? What do you lock the door? Like, of the, it's not an easy job. It needs doing. Someone needs to um, be there to ring up the gas sales, right? Um, so in a unitist economy, people from other walks of life will be chipping in probably because everyone's needs are met. Everyone's basic needs are met in a dignified way. The American dream, the basic American dream, is met unconditionally. You don't have to lift a finger. But the American economy really rises to the occasion to um, to provide for that. Um, People are still, of course, working to do those things, but their pay is calculated. Let's say, all right, the tax, we'll say it's a very high tax, but it's a transaction tax. And so it's not so irksome and annoying. And you don't have to uh, fill out all these forms every year. It's just a transaction tax. And so there's a high tax rate, yes, but everyone's getting it back. It's not just the welfare cases, the takers who are getting it back. Everyone's getting it back in the form of cultural rights vouchers and economic rights vouchers. for food, clothing, and shelter, and education, and so forth. Um, and so then it becomes more obvious that there are just jobs that need doing. Um, like you and you're not so uh, tense about, oh God, I can't like work at the cash register. I mean, that's below me. Like, no, um, the jobs can be broken up into smaller bits, 1 hour, let's say 1 hour shifts, 4 hour shifts, 6 hour shifts, and all people from all walks of life. I mean, let's say higher walks of life can be fulfilling those needs, and it won't be so dismal. Like you'll have different kinds of people, like um, not just beaten down like people. And I mean, I've met many cheerful, wonderful people in retail, and I've worked in retail myself. Um, it livens things up, and you'll have people from all sorts of local people fulfilling the economic roles, the cashiers and stuff, the lowly jobs and stuff, because it'll be uh, they'll be getting some spending money for doing it. They'll be doing people actually appreciate their service because everyone knows they don't have to be there. No one has to be there. Um, it'll just be more cheerful, right? And not so desperate, and um, a more beautiful human scaled economy. Now, to finish these last points of this slide, yeah, labor unions are a part of the economy. And um, most of the things that labor unions have sought to achieve, the threefold Commonwealth will enact that for everyone. All right. Um, some of the things I would say, a couple of shortcomings of the labor movement is that, for one, there are industries where the labor union became so powerful that it became corrupt, and it wasn't about work anymore. It was like just about getting the very highest salary for the least amount of work, which is understandable. It's totally understandable, especially since in conventional capitalism, that's what the stockholders are trying to do. They're literally doing no work. The stockholders, um, except for unless they're employee stockholders, they're literally doing no work and just getting um, profit for it. Um, and so, why would the actual laborers not try to also do that? I mean, it makes total sense. However, it is about the work, also, right? No, and we the threefold republic doesn't lose sight of the work, right? Work is worth doing. It's also worth everyone also is worth having a dignified existence. Um, so also the labor another shortcoming of the labor movement is that it's like it mostly just has a foothold in certain industries which are you know very high paying, and and or government sector like us public school teachers, because they can't be um, the public schools can't go out of business, so to speak, right? Um, so we are very sympathetic with the labor movement, and we want to actually gather all the goals, the the goals of every labor union in the country. And in the case of Russia, it would be the goals of all the labor unions in Russia, and compile them into a comprehensive list of goals and enact all of those goals for everyone. Because what I was also going to say is like when I worked in retail, like where were the unions there? Like I've I've hardly ever in my lines of work. I worked before becoming a writer, and like where were the labor unions there? Like when I worked at the gas station when I was younger, like there was no labor union knocking on my door, like no one looking out for me. Um, should I have um, should I have stepped up and sought out some sort of retail cashiers union? Like I never heard of it. Like there was just no presence of the unions in my life. Um, now my dad was had some experience with a union as a postal worker. Again, that's a government job that can't go out of business, so to speak. Um, and my mother, when she was a school teacher, she was also a member of a union, I believe. Again, that was a government job that can't go out of business. Um, so we benefited from the union efforts, and, and I am sympathetic. And so we want to uh, realize the labor goals for every worker, every citizen. Yeah, and the last point on here is consumer groups, consumer advocates, consumer federations. There's not a lot of these in America, and like Consumer Reports magazine has a very good reputation. Um, there is actually a consumer federation in America. This is part of the economy, and this would be a bigger aspect in a healthy economy. We consumer federations, and that actually could be um, negotiations and contracts and so forth, but between the consumer federations and various industries and producers and labor unions, um, so that the consumers have a actual uh, stake in shaping the economy, an organized stake. So that's what's in the economic sector. All those things: food, clothing, shelter, transportation, utilities, infrastructure, businesses, industry trade groups, chamber of commerce, banks, currency issuance, stock exchanges, labor unions, and consumer federations. Next slide. This is about unitism. It's capitalism 4.0. It's unity economics. It's not socialist economics, and it's not capitalist economics. It's it is capitalist economics. It's beyond capitalism because like I said, the gist of unity economics is that all baseline human needs, but not wants or luxuries, the needs are unconditionally met via earmarked economic rights certificates or vouchers, food, clothing, shelter, transportation, and cultural rights certificates or vouchers, childhood school tuition, secondary vocational tuition, medical care. I mean, college or vocational tuition, which would be a huge deal in America, given the rising tuition rates and the student debt. These are issued equally to all citizens, regardless of their personal wealth or dearth. Unitism thus sidesteps the predictably snide division of humanity into so-called makers and takers, conservatives, liberals, productive people, welfare, ingrates. Um, it's so predictable and snide, and there are societies which um, have sidestepped this in some ways. Like Sweden, there's if I'm not mistaken, the parents receive a sort of stipend for every child they have, every Swedish citizen, whether you're rich or poor. Um, and again, we're not suggesting Sweden as a model because it is a nation state. It hasn't differentiated the culture and state and the economy. But there's certain um, gems in every human society that the threefold Commonwealth can take up and um, apply it in its rightful place. We can see whether, oh yeah, this is a part of the economic um, life, or this is part of the equal rights life, and this is part of the free cultural life. All right, the second point here is citizens are, of course, free to spend above and beyond the general subsidies, the earmarked vouchers, and they're free to spend their certificates at any service provider, thus protecting freedom of choice. As we said, food stamps doesn't mean that the government owns and operates grocery stores. In contrast, in Americanism, the government does own and operate the school systems and most of the universities, or many of the universities. Um, that's going to be done away with in the threefold Commonwealth. However, see, neoconservatism, or let's say heartless libertarianism, would simply divest it all and then say good luck, sink or swim. We're divesting everything from the government, or just making the government as small as possible, except for maybe the military and the jails. And good luck if you're not at the top of the food chain, better sell your organs. I mean, that is a an end game picture for libertarianism and neoconservatism. Now, this threefold Commonwealth actually really appreciates libertarianism because, I mean, the certain aspects of it, and we would take those up, but it's not just divesting everything and getting rid of the government is not it's a one-sided solution. It's not a solution. It's actually an idol. It's like it's a fantastic idea. Just like if you just privatize everything in life and turn everything into a business, including so there's no government, it's just a government business, and turn the family into a business as well, and turn everything, the school education, into a business, and turn church into a business, turn synagogue and the mosques into a business, then everything will be well. It'll be the best possible world. Well, that's just a fantasy. Those are just words. Does that actually work? It does work in some ways. I mean, obviously, like Dubai, the city of Dubai is flourishing. I mean, Singapore does flourish in a way. There's really wonderful aspects to privatization, and from our perspective, a threefold perspective, the reason why Singapore and Dubai have worked so well, and also Switzerland and other places like that, where private industry has really taken off, is because there is a separation of economy and state. So that is healthy. And whereas in many of these countries in the world, statism is just holds sway, like bureaucracy. And it's so deadening. It's just like dispiriting. And so it's when something like Dubai opens up and really separates the economy from the state and lets the economy do its thing, it is amazing. You know what? The threefold Commonwealth takes that to another level. Like it turns a whole country, a whole land of that into um, a situation like Dubai. At the same time, it's not just separating the economy from the state; it's also separating the nation from the state and providing like um, cultural freedom, which has never been seen before, allowing all the nations in the world to offer their school systems there, like letting people choose their own nationality or not to participate or fund any nationality. Um, it's just a whole nother level of human society in a similar way that like the separation of church and state, which Thomas Jefferson initiated. It was like a whole new thing. It really did lift America into kind of new echelon compared to the rest of humanity. Um, yeah. So threefold Commonwealth, it builds on the Dubai model, if you could say that, the libertarian model. It builds on that, um, and it further differentiates that, and so that there can be a real burst of life, new vibrancy that never before seen. And then the third point here, so the rights governance is streamlined because it no longer owns or operates any cultural or economic assets, um, but it does discern and legislate these economic rights vouchers and the cultural rights vouchers. Um, so yeah, so in that sense, the rights governance is ultra libertarian because the rights governance doesn't even, you know, own or operate the central bank or the Federal Reserve. And Americans point to the Federal Reserve, which was initiated around World War One as a big turning point in sort of an enslavement of the American people. The threefold Commonwealth is able to untangle that. Um, when a threefold Commonwealth, threefold Republic is initiated in America, then that those old wounds, those old tangles will be untangled. But there's similar entanglements in every nation state, in Russia, of course, um, and it's going to wash out. This untangling will wash out these old wounds that are just beating down the generations, um, in every country, including America. This craziness, this dispiriting, um, society. So if I finish this slide here, yeah. So not even libertarianism has really said, oh yeah, even the currency should be divested from the government. Or, um, well, I know libertarians would argue with me, but I've never seen a libertarian proposal for the separation of national culture from the state. Um, I haven't seen a neoconservative suggest that the governance should be drained of all national sentiment. So threefolding is even more libertarian than libertarianism. It's more social, more warm-hearted than socialism. Let's move on to the next slide. Here's one man who has advocated for this new kind of capitalism 4.0, which we call unitism. It's the economic aspect of the threefold Commonwealth. Otto Scharmer is a senior lecturer at MIT, professor at Tsinghua University in China as well, and he is the advocate for this theory U, path of organizational development and personal development. And he says here, what does it take to put economy and society 4.0 onto its feet? It takes a threefold revolution: an individual, a relational, and an institutional inversion. And Otto Scharmer is familiar with the threefold Commonwealth idea, and he's speaking from that ethos. So in the previous videos, we showed the the rights service areas, which are the continuation of what are now the federal subjects of Russia. We also showed the cultural service areas, which are the cultural equivalent, which would be their boundaries would be based on the watersheds. This is the economic equivalent of the oblasts, the federal subjects. These are the economic service areas, ESAs. And these boundaries are based on the existing macroeconomic regions of Russia. Russia has officially, delineated macroeconomic regions, and these names and boundaries are straight from that map. They would have their own flag based on the, um, economic Commonwealth flag. Each would have its own red and white logo up in the top, the Far Eastern ESA, the Northwest Western ESA, and so forth. These would be equivalent, something like chambers of commerce or like like guilds, guild associations. Um, yes, economic forums. This Unitist economics, also called associative economics, was reviewed by the American Economic Review from the American Economic Association, and J.E. Le Rossignol says, when the threefold commonwealth is realized, there will be a sufficiency of commodities, greater equalization of wealth, a growing sense of social solidarity, both national and international, and a tremendous release of spiritual energy, which should create a civilization greater than any which the world has seen. The American Economic Review is not a fringe journal. It's a mainstream journal. We have another quote from the Journal of Political Economy from the University of Chicago Press, also not a fringe journal. It's a peer-reviewed journal. And Guidon Gottlieb, the author of the historical homelands idea, after our institute is named after Guidon Gottlieb, he was also a University of Chicago faculty. And so there's some University of Chicago connections there. But John Maurice Clark, in his book review, he says, if the threefold commonwealth principle be taken merely as an ideal defining the spirit in which institutions are developed, it might almost seem that the threefold commonwealth is preaching the Anglo-Saxon ideal. So John Maurice Clark is speaking as an Anglo-Saxon. There's the independence of the press, the church, and higher institutions of learning. That's certainly a recognized ideal with us Anglo-Saxons, and sets up to some extent an independent community of the mind. So that's the cultural commonwealth. And the function of the state in relation to industry is supposed to be the arbitration and protection of human rights, rather than the direct control of the production of commodities. Precisely the distinction that the threefold commonwealth makes. So he says the Anglo-Saxon separation of industry and government is similar to the threefold commonwealth. However, Anglo-Saxon industrialism would not satisfy the threefold commonwealth requirements, for our economic, intellectual, and spiritual communities are not organized, and their functions are not divided as the threefold commonwealth divides them. For the threefold commonwealth demands that wages and labor conditions be not fixed by economic forces, but be adjudicated as a matter of right. So John Maurice Clark recognizes that Anglo-Saxonism provides some basis or similarities with the threefold commonwealth, but that Anglo-Saxonism falls short in differentiating certain things, such as the separation of labor conditions from just economic managerial whim. And and that's why we get the income disparity and so forth in the Anglo-Saxon countries and elsewhere. But as the leaders of the free world, and as an Anglo-Saxon myself, I can take us to task with that. And I am not only criticizing, offering a solution that's offered to our Anglo-Saxon peoples as well. This slideshow is presented to the free nations of post-Russia. It's also presented to the Russian people. But these same principles, the threefold commonwealth, applies to America as well, and will cure our Anglo-Saxon malaises as well. I hesitate to say this, but the threefold commonwealth will make America great again. And not only great, it will make America great and wise and beautiful again. book we wrote a book about what this threefold Commonwealth would look like in Ukraine and how it could end the war immediately if Ukrainian leadership would take up this idea. And we actually sent this book to many different ambassadors recently, and it's hard to get a foothold in people's attention. So we'll see what comes of those um, mailings. But here is a picture of Ukraine as a threefold Commonwealth. Each of the sectors, each of the Commonwealths is independent, has their own flag. Here's the Ukrainian economy on the left, the Ukrainian governance in the middle, and the Ukrainian cultural council on the right. And this symbology is just an example. Of course, Ukrainian people and Ukrainian leadership would design their own threefold flags, but this may help people picture it at least. The Ukrainian flag has the blue sky and the yellow field, the yellow earth. And our symbology we offer here, the yellow earth is like the economy, and the blue sky is like the cultural sector. And where the blue sky and the yellow earth meet, that's like the rights sector. That's where you have economic vouchers. Economic rights and cultural rights, and also just general civic rights, such as public safety. And as I mentioned in a previous video, when I visited Ukraine in the village of Berezanka, I saw a silver trident on the wall of the police station there. And so we use that as just an offer as a symbol of the rights of a right state. And then a bronze trident for the economic flag, and a golden trident for the cultural flag. And this flag, the cultural councils, remember, they are not just attached to one nation. All the different national cultural organizations are potential participants in that, voluntary participants in that cultural council. The Ukrainian nation would be divested as a national cultural trust as a nation. It would be just one of many nations nationalities that would be offering their cultural services within that state jurisdiction. And we suggest that in the threefold Commonwealth that the previous name of the name of the nation not be used for any of the three administrations, because it's no longer attached to the nation. That's why we offer this poetic name, the land of the trident or the threefold Commonwealth of the trident, which is an existing poetic name. We didn't make that up. The land of the trident. So you have the economy of the trident. You have the rights governance of the trident, and you have the cultural council of the trident. And the Ukrainian nation is just one of many national cultures in the trident jurisdiction. So let's see. We're getting near the end. I want to pause here and talk about this next slide in another video. Hope to see you then. That was the economic Commonwealth. Thank you.